thanks a lot for the invitation and for the organization of this very nice workshop. And I must say, for the first time, I don't have to explain what an event-driven camera is, so it's kind of a big relief. So I will start with a couple of slides of motivation. So I'm working at the ICRA facility at IIT, and our goal is to develop robots that can help people in daily activities. So we are talking mostly about humanoid robots. And the challenge here is to have autonomy. And autonomy means, you heard it this morning, not only being free from cables and power supply, but being able to run low power on battery for a long time, but it also means to take decisions autonomously and do something to interact with the real world. And these two aspects of autonomy are strictly linked to each other. And there are, as engineers, we want to implement those systems, and we try to find inspiration from what is really working and autonomous. And so, great example of autonomy is from any animal that you can think about. Here we have a bee, it could be really any other animal. The idea is that with a bunch of neurons and with very low power, that can do amazing things. So the idea is, we are engineers, we want to develop technology that somehow performs like these ones. And to do that, we want to understand which are the biological principles that make, the computational principles that make biology so outperforming in certain types of tasks, not in solving equations, but in interacting with the real world, so much better than digital computation. And there are a lot of examples on why, on which are things that make biology better than digital computation. And I think that the work of Toby with the DVS is an amazing example of this, so capturing the fact that the way you encode information from sensors is going to radically change the way you can do computation, and you can extract information from the sensors in a way that is also power efficient. So that's why when I started working on the ICRA robot, that is this guy here, I started trying integrating the event-driven vision sensors on the robot. And then, of course, we want also to have computation. So in the system that I've developed, we have different platforms to do computation. We use the Think board that I think most of you know. It's based on FPGA and ARM cores for doing fast acquisition of the sensors and configuration, and FPGA-based processing. Then we have traditional CPU implementation of algorithms, but also we can integrate neuromorphic processors like, for example, Spinnaker, or in the future we could also, for example, use TrueNode that was nicely introduced this morning. Not only this, since I think that event-driven approach is not only important for vision but also for other sensory modalities, I started working on touch. So I didn't know if to put the touch implementation of event-driven sensing in this presentation, but I thought it was kind of interesting, even if it's not vision, to see that we can implement other types of modalities with this approach. And then, of course, we develop all the communication, because on the robot you need fast serial communication, miniaturization, and few wires to go on the robot. So I decided to present the work that I did on touch. So why is touch important? Well, first of all, as anybody can guess, it's important for manipulation. The ICRA robot has been built to study the development of cognition through object interaction and manipulation of objects. So it's very important, and it has fully sensorized fingertips for this type of task. But touch is also important on many other things. For example, here is an example. Well, you need to detect contacts with humans and with other objects for safety reasons. And also, if you think about a robot that is interacting with the environment and with other people, and possibly cooperate with people, it has to understand the forces that are applied to the body of the robot. And in this case, it's a balancing application developed by a group in IIT. You see where you have color, it means that there are tactile sensors on the robot. And the robot can sense forces in the joints here with joint force sensors. But touch is really important to localize the point of application of the force. And this picture also shows another very important aspect of touch, is that the contact, so the place where you actually have a tactile signal is very localized. And it's localized in space and time, and it's much more sparse than in a vision sensor. So this gives us a motivation from the engineering point of view to implement an event-driven tactile system, because then you transfer information instead at so how it is done now, it's every 10 milliseconds you scan more than 4,000 taxes on the robot and send that information around. But most of the taxes are just not touched. So if you only count these very few contacts and you can only send information about those, from an engineering point of view, you're saving a lot of power. So I started working on event-driven sensors, and here is a pulse-fed device. It's basically a CMOS transistor where you deposit a piezoelectric material on top of the transistor. Whenever you press or release, current is generated across the channel, and you can read out that current nicely because you are already on silicon, and you can put, for example, silicon models of deeply integrated fine neurons that read out the current from the pulse-fed. And every time you touch or you release, each of the neuron can send an output firing rate that is directly proportional to the force that you're applying. And this is with very high bandwidth and with very low latency. So this is kind of the block diagram of what is done. You have the pulse-fed, an amplifier, and then two deep integrated fine neurons that can send out digital spikes. It turns out that this implementation encodes for the absolute intensity of the force, but if you do a small feedback and you reset the amplifier pretty much as it is done on the DVS, you reset the amplifier to the current state when you emitted the previous spike, then you can encode for transients, so for variations of the force. And here is the proof of that, done with measurements on a prototype that we produced. Basically, in the sustained part, if you change the force linearly, you change the output mean firing rate of the neuron linearly. And if you instead implement the transient one, you can change linearly the slope derivative of the signal, and then the frequency will be linear to that. So of course, this is kind of long-term project, because before integrating this thing on the robot, you need to have flexible silicon. So it's a matter of engineering the thing to put it on the robot. But we want to have something now on the iCub, and this is the technology that it is used. So we have sensors in the fingertip, but also on the skin, as I told you, and they are both based on the same technology, that is capacitive technology. And now everything is frame-based, clock-driven. And this means that basically you have a sampling rate that is constant and has nothing to do with what is really happening on the robot. But we want to have something that adapts the sampling rate to the dynamics of the signal. So I started implementing a hybrid system where you have the tactile sensing elements that are still acquired in a clock-driven fashion. So the front end is still clock-driven, but very locally to the sensors, we have an FPGA board that implements an event-driven readout of the sensors that we read. And with this, we save a lot of data bandwidth, because we don't send information when the sensors are not active. So, and we use serial AR communication between the different tactile hubs that then transfer all the information to the head of the robot, where the events from the skin and the events from vision are timestamped developed by the same device. So we can also start looking at how to use the temporal correlation and the temporal information that we have between touch and vision to do multi-sensor integration. So these are simulations that we did to characterize, to decide which algorithm we want to use for doing event-driven encoding on the fingertips. So this is the one pixel of the finger of the robot when the robot is pressing in this way on an object. This was done for doing object recognition with standard techniques, with frame-based techniques, but we could use kind of the same signal to see the performance of our algorithm. So if for each sample you check if there is a threshold crossing, then when you have a change, every time you have a sample, basically you send out a spike. So, but you don't really know when the threshold has been crossed, because you're still limited by the 10 milliseconds acquisition of the frame-based sensor. And so this means that to be able to use this type of coding, you use a send-on delta principle. So whenever you see a delta change, you also send the absolute value of the scheme to processing. You still save a lot of computation and a lot of bandwidth, but you don't really have the same principle of encoding information in the timing of the spikes. So what we did was to change interpolate basically the signal at a higher frequency. So we can, in principle, reconstruct very easily with a linear interpolation, reconstruct what happens between two samples. And with this, using then a level threshold, we have exactly the information of when the threshold has been crossed. And in this way, you can easily reconstruct the signal with very low error. And it's not that we are interested in reconstructing the signal, but it's a proof that we don't lose information in doing this operation, and that the event-driven encoding still retains the important information that we want to use for computation. So here's the performance of encoding, and basically what we look at is the number of bits that we send for a given acquisition time with respect to the number of bits that we would send with a frame-based sensor. And so here you have 10 bits, that is the precision of the clock-driven sampling, and S is the number of samples. That is fixed for a fixed time window. While on top you have the number of bits of the event-driven sensing, that is 32, because we decided to use 32 to have the address, enough space for the address, and if we want also for the absolute value, and the number of events. The number of events is not fixed, and this is the key. So depending on how the taxes are activated, E is going to change a lot. So here you can see that we have two gamma measurements. One is the maximum one. That would mean what happens if I only consider one pixel that is active. So this taxa number 7 is always active because it's the one that is actually stimulated. And the red one is if I consider all the 12 taxas on the finger. So if only number 7 is active, I'm going to save a lot. And if you think that on the whole robot we have 4,500 sensing elements, you can see that really you have a lot of saving with this method, and still the reconstruction is very good. So this is kind of the state of the art. We have now a first implementation on FPGA that we are going to test in the robot. So I'm now moving to what I'm doing for vision. So as I said, I'm working with the ICRA robot, and the latest thing we did was to develop a new eye where we have two sensors. One is a frame-based sensor, very high quality, megapixel one, color-based, and the other one is the ATIS sensor. We are using only, for now, only the DVS pixel part of the ATIS sensor. We were interested in having high resolution, basically. And the idea is that with this is a dual system. It's done with a single lens and beam splitter, so the two sensors see exactly the same field of view, but one has very high spatial resolution and very low temporal resolution, and a kind of narrow field of view because the sensor is small, given the APS pixel, as Toby explained this morning, is quite small. But the artist, I don't know if you see, so this is the usual video, and I think Kronakam already explained this very nicely. The artist has very low spatial resolution in comparison to the frame-based one, but it has much higher temporal resolution and a bigger field of view. So in a sense, we could, since the two sensors can foveate, we can have a sort of biologically inspired system where you use high temporal resolution information to detect and track fast stimuli, but then you can use frame-based cameras for object recognition, pretty much as your conclusion Davide today. So to get the best of both worlds. And the idea here is to exploit whatever we have with frame-based cameras and step by step substitute what we can do better with event-driven cameras. And I think what we can do better is detecting fast-moving targets, mostly. So I think you understood this morning that with these sensors you don't have frames, you don't have spatial information is kind of a bit tricky to get, and you don't have OpenCV. You have a continuous event stream that is very different from a frame. And the challenge is to develop ways to extract information from these sensors. And once you do that, you can do that in real time with very low latency, and that's very good for robotics. So how can you do that? What you saw this morning is a way to take computer vision and adapt it to use events. So try to find novel ways on how to use the knowledge of computer of 50 years of computer vision to extract information. I think it's very challenging and interesting to try to exploit the temporal domain that we have with event-driven cameras and devise novel ways of thinking to vision. And then there's also the big chapter of biologically inspired vision. That is another way to use the sensors, because since they use spikes, they are very similar to ganglion cells. It's kind of a natural approach to use them biologically inspired methods. So I'm going to give you kind of 3 examples very quickly, without going into much details, of these 3 types of approaches. So one, I think a lot of you know this, so it's going to be very quickly. This is the optical flow that was developed by Riyad and myself a few years ago. And this is a clear example on how you could change your thinking to exploit the temporal information that we have from the sensors. And the idea is that here you represent time as a dependent variable. It's not on the x-axis, it's on the z-axis. So you can think of this surface of events that continuously grows over time. And so if you look at the change of time with respect to space, you actually get the inverse of the velocity. And this is how you compute the optical flow, right? So how it is done then, you get, this is a very small patch of that 3D surface that you saw before. You fit a plane, here this red square, and then you compute the gradients of the plane, and you have the inverse of the velocity. And you can get a nice optical flow for each event. And it's an event-by-event method, this one. It turns out that, this is, to me, it's really an example on how you can change your thinking. And one thing about this is that you have normal flow. You don't really have the real flow because you have the aperture problem. So one thing we started to look at is the corner detection, because corners, as you know, can solve the aperture problem, and they are very interesting features to track, as you saw also this morning. And another thing that you can do with corners is you only kind of confine your algorithm to work with corners, so you can reduce a lot the number of events that you have to process and go faster in real time. So how we do the corner detection, this is, I'm going to explain the first implementation that we did, and then later you can see a live demo of a work that was done in collaboration with Davide, thanks to Elias Mugler, that implemented a faster corner detection method. So here it's using a well-known traditional computer vision algorithm that is the Harris corner detection. We wanted to do that with the timestamps of the events, but it turns out that it doesn't really work nicely. So what we did was to take the events and create binary image patches. So for every event you get, you make a binary patch where you put black where there was an event and white where there was nothing. And this is a very nice patch where you can run your Harris corner detection. If you use local patches with a fixed number of events, then we can solve the problem that we have, that different objects moving at different velocities or at different depths create a different number of events, and therefore you're more robust in getting a more precise, kind of removing motion blur, basically. So the area score, here I'm going quickly. Basically, if you have corner, so here is the position of the corner from the ground truth. If you have a corner, the Harris score is high. If you have an edge, the Harris corner is negative, and the Harris score is negative. And if you don't have a corner, so if you are far from your corner position, the Harris score is low. So you can easily put a threshold here and say, okay, these events are events that belong to a corner, and you can tag them and then use for later computation. And these ones are just events that belong to an edge or noise or whatever. So here is kind of a movie of what happens. Here we have a grid that is moving at constant speed. Here you can create the patches, compute the flow, the score, and tag them in red if you found an edge. So this is kind of robust to different speed and orientations of the corners, and here is a kind of more real situation where you can track corners of objects put on a desk when the robot is moving and performing a trajectory. And here you can see the corner trace over time. And where you see that there are gaps is because the robot stopped and started again. So you don't have a continuous trace, but you lose the corner basically when the camera stops. And I think this is one of the challenges, making the tracking robust to changes of speed, and most importantly, changing of the relative speed between the target and the camera, because this is something that we are going to encounter a lot of times in robotics. So this is just to show you the performance of the algorithm on handmade ground truth of data. We have an error that is more than 2 pixels, and the number of processes of computation steps that we have to do with respect to a tin-based camera that is at this level is less than 50%, even for high speeds. And the number of detections, of course, increases if the speed of the stimulus increases. So one application of the corner detection is detecting ego motion and detecting independent motion and separating it from the ego motion of the robot. So one challenge that you have when you have a camera that moves, you saw it also this morning, is that you get a lot of events from the background, and you need to distinguish what is moving independently, because this could be a target that the robot has either to avoid if you're navigating or to grasp and interact with. So here it was really the hand of the ICRA robot moving a square object in front of the robot, and we can detect independent moving objects. This is ongoing work. It's based on comparison between the prediction of the optical flow that you have on the corners given your encoder's output and what you see in the scene. So the last example I'm going to show you very quickly is on, in a way, a more biologically inspired system for the detection of disparity, and in this case it's applied on the control of the divergence of the robot on target. So here we use a well-known model in biology, that is the phase shift model of Gabor filters. So basically you have binocular receptive fields, one in the left eye and one in the right eye, and in the right eye you have the Gabor filter that is shifted with respect to the filter on the left eye, and you have a bunch of them with different phase shifts. So if you then receive spikes in the left and in the right image, the ones that will match the phase, the correct phase of the filter, that is the correct displacement or disparity, then corresponds to the highest, to the correct disparity in the sensor. And what is nice in these implementations is that you don't have to do a convolution. As in traditional computer vision, you take a Gabor filter and then you have to do the convolution of the whole image. Here you have a bunch of filters, and every time a spike arrives in its field of view, so in x, y, that belongs to the filter, you just increase of a step the energy of the filter. So it's also very low power because you don't have to update all the filters and do the through convolution. Then what you can do, you can use the disparity. So in this case, these two are, this is the binocular receptive field that gives the highest output. So you can do vertex control. Basically, you can use proportional velocity control, where the velocity is decided by weighted sum of the energy of the filters tuned to different disparities. And here you have a movie of how it works. Basically, you have a bar, a pencil that is moved in front of the robot, and here you see the left camera and the right camera, and here they start to superimpose because depending on the output of filters tuned to positive, negative, or zero disparity, you can control the divergence of the robot. Here you see the robot that is responding to a step input, so it has a pencil here, and when you activate the control, it just verges. And this has a much lower latency than the same the same model implemented in a frame-based camera. And here, it's a bit weird, isn't it? But it's working in real time. There's not much optimization of the implementation of the algorithm, so it can even do better. What I think it's nice to show here is that we try to implement the same thing under office light and in a dark condition, and here you clearly see that without doing anything, thanks to the high dynamic range of the sensor, the algorithm still works. In the frame-based implementation, even for office light, they need to do normalization because they have a lot of fluctuations due to the illumination. So this is kind of the first time I could really have a plot where it shows, look, this is quantification of the effect of the high dynamic range. So this is kind of my last slide, and it's more a conclusion slide where I want to spot out which are, I think, the challenges that we have like in the near future. So here you see the robot is trying to track a ball and gaze to it. And if you see here, there's really a lot from the background. This is the first implementation that we presented at IRIS last year, and it was based on half transform. Now we moved to particle filter implementation because it turns out that the tracking has to be robust to the fact that the robot is moving the gaze towards the ball, and therefore, when it's moving the gaze, the relative motion between the ball and the eyes is very low, and you need to adjust your temporal window, your observation time, to be robust to when the ball stops and starts accelerating a lot. I think one assumption that we can use with this is the half transform output, by the way. So one assumption that we can do, and that is not trivial, and that we cannot do with frame-based cameras, is every time we observe something that is moving, we can always assume that it's always moving from one pixel to the other. And this is something you cannot do with a frame-based camera. And I think this is a strong assumption, and it allows us to have a particle filter that only makes a constant position model assumption. So it's much lower in terms of computation with respect to one where you have a lot of particles, because you need a more complex model. But still, achieving robust tracking of a target in this situation is, I think, one of the challenges we have in robotics. So this is my last slide with all the acknowledgements to all of the people that work on this project. Thanks a lot.